13 of the top 25 US banks are now building Bitcoin products. This is not priced in. You can see that from this post here. None of this is priced in. Most people have no clue that this is happening. Most people still think that Bitcoin is a scam. They still think that Bitcoin isn't worth anything. They haven't thought about how the price of Bitcoin is going to violently react when every single bank is offering custody for Bitcoin and allowing you to take on loans against your Bitcoin. This is going to change everything. The powerful thing about these big banks offering you Bitcoin related products is that you're going to be able to get cheaper and cheaper loans against your Bitcoin, meaning that you're never going to have to sell again. This is going to make attacking fiat, doing a speculative attack on fiat by using your Bitcoin to borrow fiat and then using that fiat to spend into the economy, that speculative attack is going to speed up. So if you don't have any Bitcoin right now, the banks are your competitors. The banks are going to start buying as much Bitcoin as they can in order to offer services related to Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is now at the suddenly part of its overall adoption cycle because now we have university endowments buying as much Bitcoin as they can. You can see here, Harvard is buying $120 million in Bitcoin ETFs. $120 million. They're going to put all of this money in, and then they're going to realize they still don't have enough, and they're going to buy even more. Once you start buying Bitcoin, once you start figuring out what Bitcoin is, you keep buying and you keep buying. You never, ever stop. We also have this extremely bullish update from Stake and Shake, who started accepting Bitcoin earlier this year, and they said that it's boosted their sales by 10%. What do you think this is going to do to other companies who are trying to build their businesses, who eventually realize that Bitcoin is the best form of money in the world? Do you not think that they're going to want to accept Bitcoin as well? This is changing everything. People are still underestimating the power of Bitcoin. They're still underestimating the power of just dollar cost averaging and buying as much as they can. They're not doing it because they still don't understand what Bitcoin is. I think the next 10 years are going to be absolutely insane for Bitcoin. If I didn't have any right now, I would be panicking because I know that all of these institutions, all of these banks, all of these governments are eventually going to start accumulating as much as they can. They haven't figured it out yet, but eventually they will. They're starting to offer services to them. It's just a way to make more money, but eventually they're going to figure out that this is the best way to save. So they're going to want more and more and more. Now, keep in mind that we only have 13 out of the 25 top US banks offering Bitcoin services and building on Bitcoin. The other 12 are very likely going to go bankrupt if they don't offer the same services, because you know that if the wealthy want exposure to Bitcoin, they're going to find a way to get that exposure. If their bank isn't going to allow them to get that exposure, they're going to move on. They don't care about the bank, they don't care about the bank's reputation. All they want is to maintain the value of their money, to maintain the purchasing power of their money, to make sure that their future generations are financially supported. The greatest thing about Bitcoin is that it's the best solution for a problem that we've been trying to solve for thousands of years. It's the only asset that's truly incorruptible, truly decentralized, and nothing else comes even close. Everything else is centralized, everything else is physical. Bitcoin is the discovery of digital scarcity. Too many people are falling for the trap that Bitcoin has tons of problems. It's a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's going to collapse. They're going to keep thinking this way until it's too late. And all that I can do is tell you to accumulate as much Bitcoin as you can, because I know for a fact that more and more people will adopt Bitcoin over time. We're going to see a lot of Bitcoin move from retail investors who don't quite understand what it is into the hands of corporate holders who never want to sell. If those 12 banks don't capitulate and offer Bitcoin services, they're going to see that they lose tons of their clients. I'm assuming that over the next decade or so, companies like Vanguard, who have stopped their clients from being able to achieve the massive returns that Bitcoin has had after the ETFs, I'm assuming that by that time, Vanguard will finally have figured it out and they'll finally realize that Bitcoin isn't as risky as they think it is. So, as more and more people come into Bitcoin, you're going to see that the price is going to explode. It's going to increase exponentially. I think that Bitcoin is going to break every single idea that we have of what a Bitcoin cycle should look like. Previous cycles were determined by retail. There was no institutional buying. There was no banks offering services. There was no MicroStrategy offering as many tools as they possibly can to give investors a great yield while getting cash upfront and being able to use that money to buy as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. Since 2020, institutional investors have accumulated over 1 million Bitcoin. And this means that there are 1 million people who can't accumulate a whole Bitcoin now. There are 10 million people who can't get to zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. There are 100 million people who can no longer accumulate 0.01 Bitcoin. As long as Bitcoin is being sold for fiat, you're still early. Don't think about how the price is going up and how you feel like you're overpaying when Bitcoin's price was 40, 50, 60K just last year. In 10 years, you're not going to ask yourself why you bought at 116, 117K instead of waiting until Bitcoin's price dropped to 110K. You're not going to be asking yourself that. You're going to be asking yourself why you didn't buy more. When every bank is offering Bitcoin loans, you're going to see that no Bitcoin is coming back into the market. People aren't selling because they don't need to. They can just borrow against their Bitcoin. They can take fiat out of the system that can be created out of nothing to pay for whatever they need to pay for. If you don't have Bitcoin, you're not going to be able to take advantage of this. You're not going to be able to use the services that all of these banks are eventually going to offer. You're going to be fighting for literal dust. You're going to be fighting for 10 Satoshis, 100 Satoshis at a time, rather than being able to buy thousands of Satoshis every time you put $100 into Bitcoin. So it's completely up to you if you want to wait until Bitcoin is $1 million, until Bitcoin is $10 million, until Bitcoin is $100 million. But at that point, you're not going to be able to buy Bitcoin with your fiat currencies. You're only going to be able to exchange it for goods and services. You're going to be able to exchange it for your time. You're going to exchange it for your labor, your efforts, your energy, your skills. You can develop certain skills and you can exchange them for Bitcoin, but nobody is going to want fiat for Bitcoin. So make the right decision today to accumulate as much Bitcoin as you can before all of the institutional investors figure it out and they start borrowing as many dollars as they can and dumping them into Bitcoin. You can buy Bitcoin for your family. You can buy Bitcoin for your friends. You want to make sure that they are supported in the time when Bitcoin is the only form of money that works. All of their wealth is going to evaporate if it hasn't been moved into Bitcoin. So if you can tell them to accumulate it, do that. I would highly, highly recommend it. The stock market is going to be funneled into Bitcoin. The real estate market is going to be funneled into Bitcoin. The bond market is going to be funneled into Bitcoin. These assets are going to decrease as a total percentage of the entire market until they're worth a fraction of what the entire Bitcoin market cap is. The worst thing that you can do right now is have zero Bitcoin. Even if you can buy only $1 worth, $5 worth, $10 worth a week, it may not seem worth it, but do it. Do whatever you can to put as much money into Bitcoin as you can, because you're going to see that the price will go to $1 million. It will go to $10 million. It will go much higher than where it is today. And if you don't own Bitcoin, all of the wealth that you have in the legacy financial system, you're going to see it disappear. Once the services that these banks want to offer become public, Bitcoin is not going to be the same asset anymore. It's going to be completely different. You're not going to see the same volatility. You're not going to see the world being denominated in US dollars. Everything is going to be denominated in Satoshis, because Satoshis will be the standard unit of measure, and Bitcoin is going to be the world reserve currency.